Hello everyone. I'm going to be doing a relatively quick walkthrough of the AQA GCSE Maths Higher Tier Paper 1, 2021 paper, just to go over the answers to these questions. So if we go over the first few questions, which are MCQs, the first question, simplify, in brackets a to the power of 5 all cubed. That's going to be a to the power of 15 because you multiply the indices. Question 2, x is not equal to 0.4. Circle the possible value of x. So this is going to be 26 over 70. Because you're just looking for the fraction which is not 0.4, and all the other three fractions are equal to 0.4. Question 3, circle the solid that has 7 vertices. This is hexagon based pyramid. So if you look at if we look at the base, that has 6 vertices because it's a hexagon. And then the common point at the top has 1 vertex. So if you add all of them together, it's 7 vertices. Question 4, here is a sketch of a graph. Circle the equation of the graph. So this is going to be y equals k over x. This is a pattern recognition question, because the graph has a curved shape and both the x and the y axes are asymptotes. Question 5, write 200 as a product of prime factors. Give your answer in index form. So we need to divide 200. We have to keep on repeatedly dividing it by prime numbers until we reach 1. So we can start off by dividing 200 by 2. So 200 divide 2. That's the smallest prime number, which we can do the division, and that would give us 100. And then we can also do 100 divide 2. That gives us 50. And then again we can divide that by 2, so that gives us 25. We can't do 25 divide 2, so we have to look at the next higher up prime number, or the prime factor, which we can do the division, and that would be 5. So 25 divide 5 is 5, and we can divide that by 5 as well, and that gives us 1. Because we now approach 1, we stop the division there, and then the answer would be the multiplication of all of these numbers on the left. So we do 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. And because we need to give an answer in index form, we need to simplify this. So that would be 2 cubed times 5 squared. Question 6. Lily's age is 2 years and 4 months. Hugo's age is 1 year and 8 months. Write Lily's age in months as a fraction of Hugo's age in months, and give your fraction in its simplest form. So Lily's age is going to be 28 months and Hugo's age will be 20 months when you convert their ages into the required form. And then to answer the question, we just need to do 28 over 20, and then simplifying this would give you 7 over 5. Question 7, use approximations to estimate the answer to square root 97 plus 2.014 cubed over 0.49. So we need to estimate these individual numbers to a sensible in a sensible way to make the calculation easy. So we can approximate square root of 97 as the square root of 100. We can approximate 2.014 cubed as 2 cubed, and we can approximate 0.49 as 0.5. So if we replace these numbers with the estimates back into the question, we get the square root of 10 plus 2 cubed in the numerator, and then 0.5 in the denominator, and then obviously this would be the same as 10 plus 8 over 0.5, which is 36. Question 8a, solve 5x plus 6 is greater than 3x plus 15. So this is we answer this in the same way as if this was an equation, but we keep the inequality sign instead of using an equal sign. So if we gather the x's on the left hand side and the numbers on the right hand side, we get 2x is greater than 9, and then dividing both sides by 2, you get the answer would be x is greater than 4.5 or 4.5. Question 8b, write down the inequality represented by the number line. So the limits of the inequality are 2 and 5, but we need to also focus in on the left hand side, the lower limit, because there's a black dot above the 2, and the significance of that means that the black dot means or signifies that it's also inclusive of that value of 2. So we wouldn't just write 2 is less than x, which is in turn less than 5. We'd write 2 is less than or equal to x, which in turn is less than 5. If you look at the upper limit, there's a white circle above the 5. The white circle means that it's not inclusive of 5, so we just keep the inequality as it is, as we've written. So 2 is less than or equal to x, which in turn is less than 5. Question 9. The diagram shows an octagon. X equals 1 and y equals 5 are lines of symmetry. Work out the coordinates of point Q. So to appreciate this question, we need to first realize how can we get from point P to the center, and the center has coordinates 1, 5, because the center will be where the two lines of symmetry meet, which is 1, 1, 5, the coordinates of the center. So to find the vector that moves point P to the center, it would be firstly going 3 to the left, 3 to the right, and then 11 up. So if we repeat that vector, starting at the center, then we'd arrive at point Q. So the x coordinate of Q would be the x coordinate of the center, so 1, and then going 3 to the right, which is 1 plus 3 equals 4, and then doing the same thing for the y coordinate of Q, that would give you 16. So the coordinates of x are 4, 16. Question 10a, work out 2000 times 70,000, give your answer in standard form. So we can convert these numbers in standard form itself. So 2000 would be 2 times 10 to the power of 3, and 70,000 would be 7 times 10 to the power of 4. And then we can multiply these individual numbers together. So 2 times 7 would give you 14, and then 10 cubed times 10 to the power of 4 would give you 10 to the power of 7. But this answer is not in standard form because 14 is more than 10. So we can divide that by 10 to give you 1.4. And then to compensate, we need to increase the 10 to the power of 7 by a power of, we need to increase it by times 10 to compensate. So that would be 1.4 times 10 to the power of 8. 10b, work out 1.8 times 10 to the power of 2 divided by 3 times 10 to the power of minus 1. Give your answer as an ordinary number. So we can do these divisions individually. So we can do 1.8 divide 3 and 10 to the power of 2 divide 10 to the power of minus 1. So 1.8 divide 3 would be 0.6, and then 10 to the power of 2 divide 10 to the power of minus 1 would be 10 to the power of 3, because you're subtracting the indices. So 2 minus negative 1 would be 2 plus 1. And we need to convert this into an ordinary number. So 0.6 times 10 to the power of 3 would give you 600. Question 11. A, B, C, and D are junctions on a motorway. CD is 3 times the distance of AB. BC is 25 miles. Salma drives from A to C. She drives for 30 minutes at an average speed of 62 miles per hour. Work out the distance AD. So if we write down the information we're given in algebraic terms, if we say that AB is x miles, then CD must be 3x, because the question tells us that CD is 3 times the distance of AB. And the question says that BC is 25 miles. So if we use and the next part of the question says that Salma drives from A to C at an average speed of 62 miles per hour for 30 minutes. So speed equals distance over time. If we substitute the values we know into the distance over time, speed equals distance over time formula, then we get 62 equals x plus 25, because that's the distance from A to C. And then we divide that by 0.5, because 0.5 hours is 30 minutes. And we need to convert that into hours, because our speed is in miles per hour. So we get that equation. So that means we need to solve for x. And solving for x, you'd get x equals 6. So that means that x is 6 miles. So that means we can work out what the distance of AB and CD is. AB is going to be 6 miles and CD will be 18 miles. If we add all of these three numbers together, 25, 6 and 18, then we get 49 miles. 49 miles, which is the answer. Question 12. Here is a right angle triangle. Use trigonometry to work out the value of x. So if we start by writing the SOHCAHTOA, that will help us in working out which ratio we should be using. And if we consider the sides in relation to the angle, then we can see we have an opposite, which is x, and we have a hypotenuse, which is 10. So that means we need to use the sine ratio. And then using the sine ratio, opposite over hypotenuse, that would be x equals 10 equals the sine of 30 degrees. And then solving for x, that would be x equals 10 times sine of 30, and then that would give you 5 centimeters, because the sine of 30 is 0.5. And it's worth committing to memory these values of sine, cosine, and tangent for 0 to 90. For example, we can see here that the sine of 0 to 90 goes 0, half, 1 over root 2, root 3 over 2, and 1 for those angles that are mentioned. For cosine, it's the exact numbers but in reverse order. And then for tangent, you just need to remember 0, 1 over root 3, 1 under root 3. So this is worth committing to memory. Question 13. Convert 5/6 as a recurring decimal. So this should be a straightforward question, but just to go very quickly, 6 goes outside, 5 is inside. So you can't do when you do the division, obviously 0 has to go in top because 5 is less than 6. You'd carry the 5 over, so you do 50 divide 6, which is 8 remainder 2, and then 20 divide 6, which is 3 remainder 2, and then that pattern just keeps on carrying on, so you get 0.83, and then it's 3 recurring, so it's 0.83 recurring, where the dot is at 3. Question 14. Simplify 3/x plus 4/x. This is going to be 7/x because we have a common denominator of x. So you just add the numerators together and then you get 7/x. Question 15. Work out the two possible values of b. So we have x plus a in brackets and then x plus 3a in another pair. When we multiply them, it's equal to, or always equal to, x squared plus bx plus 75. So if we actually expand these brackets, we get x squared plus 3ax plus ax plus 3a squared. So this is when we expand out the brackets fully, and then when we simplify the like terms together, so we simplify the right hand side completely, then that gives you x squared plus 4ax plus 3a squared. Now if we compare this to what's given in the question, is saying that this is equal to x squared plus bx plus 75. We can ignore the x squared and just focus in on the other two terms. So we can say that 4ax plus 3a squared is equal to bx plus 75. So now it should be hopefully clear that from this 4ax is comparable to bx, so 4ax is equal to bx, and then obviously solving for b by eliminating the x, we'd get b equals 4a. So this is the formula, b equals 4a. Now we need to work out what the absolute value of b is, and what we're given is a relative value of b. So we need to work out what the value of a is in order to work out the value of b. So we need to work out what the value of a is before we can work out b, as already mentioned. We can do that because in the same way how we likened 4ax to bx, we can also liken 3a squared to 75. And when we solve this for a, we get a equals the square root of 75/3, which is plus or minus 5, because the square root of a positive number can be positive or negative. So in this case it's positive 5 and a negative 5. We can then, now that we know what the value of a is, we can work out what the value of b is by using b equals 4a. So we substitute the value of a equals plus or minus 5 in the formula b equals 4a. So if we use the positive value first, so a equals 5, then the first value of b would be 4 times 5, which is obviously 20. And then if we then use the negative value of 5, that would be 4 times negative 5, which is minus 20 or negative 20. So from there we've now got both the values of b, which is positive 20 and negative 20. Question 16. The cumulative frequency graph represents the masses of 40 necklaces. A jeweler buys every necklace with a mass greater than 21 grams. Use the graph to estimate how many she buys. So this is 16a. If we work out how many necklaces have a mass of 21 grams or less, then we can see that the corresponding value of y is at 16. So that means that 16 necklaces have a mass of 21 grams or less, because this is a cumulative frequency graph. That means that because 16 necklaces have a mass of 21 grams or less, then to work out how many have a mass of 21 grams, or more than 21 grams, then we need to do the total minus 16. The total is 40 necklaces, as given in the question. So 40 minus 16 equals 24. That's the answer to this question 16a. 16b, the lowest mass was 3 grams, the highest mass was 28 grams. Draw a box plot to represent the data. So we're given the lowest and the highest values, but to draw a box plot we also need to know the three quartiles: the lower quartile, the median, which is the second quartile, and the upper quartile, which is the third quartile. The median, because it's the second quartile, we need to look at the y-axis and divide it by 2, because it's a cumulative frequency graph. Half of 40 is 20, so we look at what the corresponding x value is when y equals 20, so this is 22. This tells us that the median mass was 22 grams. And then looking at the lower quartile will be a quarter of 40, or a quarter of the total, which would be y equals 10, and the corresponding x value for this is 18 grams, so the lower quartile is 18 grams. And then the upper quartile will be 3/4 of the total, so 3/4 of 40 is 30. So when y equals 30, the corresponding x value is 24 grams, so that means that the upper quartile is 24 grams. So now we have enough information to draw the box plot, because we're also given the lowest value and the highest value. So drawing all of this out, this is what the box plot should look like. So you have the lowest value of 3, the highest value of 28, which are represented by the line, and then the box would be 3 lines. So the first line towards the left would be the lower quartile, which is 18, then the middle line, which is the median, which is 22, and then the last line is the upper quartile, 24. And when you draw all of that together, then you should get something that looks like this. Question 17. Circle the vector that translates the point -2, 7 to the point 3, -1. So if we look at what we need to do to move the x value of -2 to the x value of 3, we need to go 5 to the left, such as how we've shown in the diagram. So that's a positive movement, because it's 5 leftwards, so that is a positive, and that would be a positive number in the vector. So the top number would be 5, positive 5. And then the next part, how to move the y value of 7 to the y value of -1, we need to go 8 downwards. So this is 8 downwards, because this is a downward movement, this would be represented by a negative number in the vector. Whereas if it went upwards, then it'd be a positive number, but in this case it's negative because it's going downwards. So that means the final answer is 5 minus 8. So 5 at the top, 8 minus 8 at the bottom. So 5 minus 8. Question 18a. Here is a triangle. Give a reason why the length of side AB cannot be 35 meters. So what we need to see here is that AC is 17 meters and BC is 13 meters. They both add up to give you 30 meters. That means that AB can't be more than 35. If it was more than 35, if it was more than 30, then the two smaller sides of the triangle would never actually meet up. So there wouldn't be a vertex in the first place. So if you actually look at this diagram, AC was 17 meters, BC was 13 meters. If AB is more than the sum of these two numbers, then you can see that the shorter sides will never actually meet up. No matter how much lower you bend them down, they'd never actually meet up. So there wouldn't be a point C in the first place. So that's why AB can't be 35 meters. Yeah. 18B. Here is a different triangle. Leah tries to use the sine rule to work out the size of angle X. Here are the first two lines of her working. So she's saying that X over sine 31 is equal to 54 over sine 72. And then she rearranges that to find X. What error has she made in this working? So if we actually write down what the sine rule is, it's A over sine A is equal to B over sine B, which is equal to C over sine C. And you can take the reciprocal of these to get sine A over A, etc. So when we actually use the sine rule, in this case it would be 31 over sine X, which is equal to 54 over sine 72. And it should be clear what error she's made, because the actual sine rule when applied is 31 over sine X equals 54 over sine 72, not X over sine 31. Leah basically confused 31 as the angle and X is the side, when actually the opposite is true. So it wouldn't be X over sine 31, it would be 31 over sine X, because the diagram depicts 31 as the side and X as the angle. So question 19. Items made at a factory have to pass two checks. 90% pass the first check. The items that fail are scrapped. 99% of the items that pass the first check pass the second check, and the items that fail are scrapped. Complete the tree diagram. So obviously probabilities of outcomes add up to 1 or 100, or 1, or which is 100%. So we're given the information that 90% pass the first check. That must mean that 10% fail the first check. So we can write that down as 0.1 for the first part. And then we're given that 99% of the items that pass the first check also pass the second check. So we'd put 0.99 there, as shown in the diagram. And then obviously because the probabilities of all outcomes add up to 1, then if 99% pass the second check, then 1% must fail the second check. So that would answer the first part, which is 19A. 19B, an item is chosen at random before the checks. Work out the probability that the item is scrapped. So an item is scrapped basically means it's failed the check. And there are two ways which an item can achieve a fail. It can either be failed on the first test, or it can be failed on the second test. So in other words, it passes the first round but then fails the second round. So if we consider the green part first, which is failing on the first check, the probability of that is 0.1. And then if we then consider the second possibility, it passes the first test and then fails the second one, the probability of that happening is the product of those two numbers. So passing the first check would be 0.9, failing the second check is 0.01, the probabilities. So when we take the product of these numbers, the answer is 0.009. And then the final answer would therefore be the sum of these two numbers, because there are two ways in which a fail can be achieved. So 0.1 plus 0.009 would be 0.109. Question 20. Which one of these is a unit of density? Circle your answer. So density is mass divided by volume, or the mass per unit volume. And out of the options, only grams per cubic centimeter matches the formula in terms of units. Grams is obviously a way of measuring mass, and cubic centimeters is a way of measuring volume. So this is the answer of the options given. Question 21. The first two terms of a quadratic sequence are 10 and 17. Here is some information about the sequence. Work out the expression for the nth term of the sequence. So because the nth term is a quadratic sequence, we can tell that because on the diagram we have a constant difference in the second line. On the first one you have 7, 13, so there isn't a constant number. But when you work out the difference of this difference, then you get a constant number of plus 6. So obviously a quadratic has a general expression of an squared plus bn plus c, where n is the nth term. We can work out what a is because the second difference is constant at plus 6, so we just need to divide this by 2 to give us the value of a, and in this case it's 3. So we can refine the general expression as 3n squared plus bn plus c. We still need to work out what b and c is, but we can work this out because we're given the first two terms of this quadratic sequence. If we look at the first term, which is 10, and substitute because 10 is the first term of the sequence, then that means n equals 1. Or in fact, even if we look at the second term, the second term is 17, which means that n equals 2, right? 17 is the second term. So substituting n equals 2 in this expression, we get 3 times 2 squared, which is 12, plus 2b, because n equals 2. So, and then plus add that onto c, you get 17. So simplifying all of that you get 2b plus c equals 5. Now if we do the same for the first term, you get b plus c equals 7 when you use n equals 1. Now we have two simultaneous equations, 2b plus c equals 5 and b plus c equals 7. So when we subtract these two together, the c cancels out and you're left with b equals minus 2. We can then substitute that into in fact, before substituting, we can refine our quadratic expression even further by saying that the expression is 3n squared minus 2n plus c. And then at this point, we can use any of the two terms to work out the value of c, and it's much simpler to use the first term because it's a lower number. So the first term is 10, so substituting the relative numbers in the expression, we have 3, because 3 times 1 squared is 3, minus 2, because minus 2 times 1 is minus 2, plus c equals 10. So 3 minus 2 plus c equals 10. Solving for c, that would give you c equals 9. So therefore the expression for the nth term is 3n squared minus 2n plus 9. Question 22. Work out the value of 5 over 7 to the power of negative 2. Give your answer as a mixed number. So because we have a negative number as a power, this means that to convert it into a positive number, so from minus 2 to 2, you'd need to take the reciprocal of the fraction that's inside. So it wouldn't be 5 over 7, it'd now be 1 over 5/7, which is just a fraction turned upside down. So in other words, 5 over 7 to the power of minus 2 or negative 2 is equal to 7 over 5 squared. So in brackets 7 over 5 all squared. And then to carry on this further, we just square the individual numbers in the fraction. So that would be equal to 7 squared divided by 5 squared, which is 49 over 25. And because we need to give our answer as a mixed number, then the answer would be 1 and 24 over 25. Because 49 divided by 25 is 1, remainder 24. Question 23. Rearrange y equals 1 over the square root of x plus 1 to make x the subject. So to make x the subject, we need x on its own. And the first thing we can do is swap the y and the x plus 1 square rooted terms together. So you have the square root of x plus 1 equals 1 over y. And then we can square both sides so that you get rid of the square root sign. So x plus 1 equals 1 over y all squared, which is 1 over y squared. And then to get x on its own, you need to subtract 1 on both sides. So you'd get x equals 1 over y squared, and then minus 1. And then that's the answer. Question 24a. The function of x is cx plus d. And then when x is 4, the function is 7. The output is 7. When x is 10, the output is 22. Work out the values of c and d. So we've given the function of x as cx plus d. When we can write two equations which are a pair of simultaneous equations. When x is 4, the output is 7. So that means that substituting x equals 4 in cx plus d, cx plus d, you'd get 4c plus d equals 7. And then when you do the same thing for x equals 10, you'd get 10c plus d equals 22. So now we have a pair of simultaneous equations. We can do the second equation minus the first equation in order to cancel out the d term in both of these equations. So yeah, again, you'd perform equation 2 minus equation 1. That would give you 6c equals 15. And then solving for c, that would be 5 over 2. And then we can now substitute this value for c in either of these equations, but it's easy to do it in equation 1. So substituting c in 4c plus d equals 7, that would give you the following. 10 plus d equals 7, so therefore d must be negative 3. So to summarize, c equals 5 over 2 and d equals negative 3. 24b, the function of g, so g of x is 2x, and hx is x minus 1 divided by 2. Circle the expression for hg brackets x. So what this basically means, hg brackets x, that basically means I'm going to substitute the value of gx in the h function. So because gx is 2x, or the function g is equal to 2x, then wherever the x term is in the h function, I'm just going to replace that with 2x. So the final answer will just become 2x minus 1 over 2. Question 25. Show that the square root of 150 minus the square root of 6 divided by root 2 times root 3 simplifies to an integer. So the first thing to notice in the denominator, square root of 2 times square root of 3, that is square root of 6. And because in both the numerator and the denominator we have a square root of 6, that means we need to rewrite the square root of 150 in terms of root 6, because that's a common number in both the numerator and the denominator. So if we rewrite the square root of 150 in terms of square root of 6, then you'd get root 25 root 6, and then the square root of 25 is 5, at least the positive square root is the positive value of root 25 is 5, so the square root of 150 is equal to 5 root 6. So that means we can rewrite the entire calculation as 5 root 6 minus root 6 divided by root 6, and then simplifying all of that would give you 4 root 6 divided by root 6. And then because we have root 6 in both the numerator and denominator, we can cancel them out because it's 4 root 6 divided by root 6. So you're just left with 4, which is the answer to this question. Question 26. D equals 2f and e minus f over d minus e equals 1/4. Work out the ratio of e to f. So if we substitute d equals 2f into the equation, into equation 2, then you get e minus f as the numerator and 2f minus e as the denominator, and then that's all of that is equal to 1/4. And then now we're going to cross multiply now. So the 4 would we'd multiply e minus f, all of that, by 4, and then 2f minus e would be multiplied by 1. Doing all of that would give you the following. So 4 brackets e minus f is equal to 2f minus e. Expanding out the brackets, you'd get that, and then we need to simplify this. Simplifying all of this, so you have e on the left hand side and f on the right hand side, we get 5e equals 6f. Now we need to work out what the ratio of e to f is. In other words, what is e divided by f? E divided by f, from the equation or from the formula 5e equals 6f, if we do e over f, then we need to do 6 divide 5. Basically we just rearranged the formula to get e over f, and doing so would give you 6 over 5. So that means that the ratio of e to f is 6 to 5. Question 27. The vertices of a regular hexagon lie on a circle with center O and radius 5. Work out the shaded area. Okay, so to work out the shaded area, it's better to appreciate this as the subtraction of two shapes. The grey shape is the sector of a circle of angle 60 degrees, and then the second shape is an equilateral triangle, because the angle is 60 degrees and both the radii are 5 centimeters, so this is an equilateral triangle. So if you do the grey sector minus the white equilateral triangle, then you're left with the grey shaded area. The area of a sector is just the area of a circle multiplied by theta over 360. Theta in this case is 60 degrees, so doing 60 over 360 times by pi times 5 squared would give you 25 pi over 6. So that's and that's the area of the sector. For the triangle, we're given two sides and an angle, so we can use the formula half AB sine C formula. So A and B are going to be the two sides that are next to each other. So in this case, they're both 5 centimeters, and then C is the angle in between these two sides. So this is 60 degrees, and then so applying that formula, you get a half times so half times 5 times 5 times the sine of 60. Now 5 times 5 over 2 is 25 over 2. Sine of 60 is root 3 over 2, and we encountered this in a similar question, and I said it's worth remembering the trigonometrical values. This is an example of why you need to do that. So the sine of 60 is root 3 over 2. So when we do this calculation, all of this together, you get 25 root 3 all over 4, and this is square centimeters. So that gives you the area of the triangle, but now we need to work out the area of the grey shaded area. So actually the area is going to be 25 pi over 6 minus 25 root 3 over 4. We can convert both of these fractions so that 12 is the denominator. So 25 pi over 6 is the same as 50 pi over 12. And then for the second fraction, 25 root 3 over 4, that's the equivalent of 75 root 3 over 12. And then finally, to work out the area of the shaded region, we need to subtract these numbers. So that would be 50 pi over 12 minus 75 root 3 over 12, which gives you 50 pi minus 75 root 3 all over 12. So that's the area of the shaded region, and we've left that in the form that the question wants us to answer it in. Question 28a. Here is a graph of y equals cosine of x for angles between 0 and 360. On the grid below, draw the graph of y equals in brackets x minus 90 for values between 0 and 360. So because this is y equals cosine x minus 90, the minus 90 means that because it's a minus, we need to, this would be a translation of 90 degrees to the right, because it's a minus 90. And so because it's a minus, it'd be a positive movement towards the right. So this is what the graph would look like. So you can see that when the angle was 90 degrees, the y value was 1. That gets shifted so that it's 90 degrees to the right. So instead of 91, it'd be 181. And then you do the similar thing for the other values. So in the original graph, one of the coordinates is 180, 0, so that gets shifted 90 degrees to the right, so it'll be now 270, 0. and then you just do that so on for all of the other common points, so that you get this graph. 28b, on the grid below, draw the graph of y equals 1 plus cosine of x. So because this is 1 plus cosine of x, that means that all of the y values on this graph get shifted by 1 up. So this would be a translation by the vector of 0, 1. So this is what the graph would look like. Mostly I don't have the 2 in there, but you can imagine that the highest point on that graph would be 2, and the lowest point on that graph would be 0. Because the entire graph gets pushed up by 1 unit up. Question 28c. Rita tries to draw the graph y equals cosine of negative x for values of x between 0 and 360. This is a graph. Give a reason why the graph is incorrect. So if we look at the graph that she drew, she drew a graph of y equals cosine of x, but it's reflected in the x-axis, and that's not what you're supposed to do. Because this is y equals cosine and brackets negative x, because the negative sign is applicable to dx, so it's minus x, then that means this would be a reflection in the y-axis. And in actual fact, when you reflect the graph in the y-axis, then the graphs would just be identical. But what she's done is she's reflected the graph in the x-axis, when actually it should have been reflected in the y-axis. Question 29. Here is triangle ABC on a grid. Describe a single transformation of the triangle so that point B is invariant, so it stays in the same place. Point A moves to 1, 1, and point C moves to 1, minus 1. So if we draw what the new triangle would look like after these new points are plotted, it would look like that. So you can hopefully see that there are, because this question says describe a single transformation, that means there isn't a single correct answer. There is more than one way to get from the triangle ACB or ABC into A dash B C dash. And because B is a common point, that means here there's actually 3 different ways you can get this transformation done. The first is if you were to do a reflection at y equals x plus 2, because B is a common point. So if you use x plus 2, y equals x plus 2 as the mirror line, you can see that the triangle gets mapped onto the new position. That's one possibility. The other possibility is by doing a rotation of 108 degrees at point B. So if you were to look at the triangle ABC and you rotate it 180 degrees at a fixed point of B, where B is the center of rotation, then you can also get that transformation done. And then there's also a third possibility, and that's if you were to enlarge this triangle by scale factor of -1 at B. Because it's a negative scale factor, then the triangle gets inverted, and because all the sides are equal or are of equal length, then the magnitude of the scale factor is 1. So that's a third possibility. But out of these 3, it's probably more straightforward to use either the reflection or the rotation. Probably the rotation is probably more of a simple point to put, but either of these 3 points will be acceptable. Yeah, so this is the answer to question 29, and that's the entire paper done. So I hope that was useful, and yeah, hope that was useful.